Boom, we're live.
We are live.
So, another week, another live stream Photo Buzz. We have a special guest with us all the way from chilly Colorado Springs. I checked the weather down there. Shannon, it's about 7 degrees or something like that.
Are we talking Celsius?
Celsius, yeah.
Well, then yes, you're probably correct. I don't know Celsius, but yeah. But it's shiny. The sun's shining. We're just barely getting into a little bit of spring. So
yeah. You got about the same weather as we got, pretty much.
Probably, yeah.
So my next question before we get into this is, you married a Canadian, so I'm a little disappointed that you don't know the whole Celsius thing. How did you marry a Canadian? I'm curious. We were talking about this just before we went live.
Yeah, well, so funny story. I actually did some trips to Romania, and I went with an organization and worked in some orphanages there. And so my husband had gone previously and left 2 weeks before I got there. And he stayed in contact with some of the people on staff. And through Facebook, he saw pictures of me, reached out, and I guess the rest is history, they say. So,
are you serious? He creeped you on Facebook? He's like, she's cute. I want to get to know her.
He did. I know. I was pretty impressed with his message too. So I was like, all right, I guess I'll talk to this guy. But
wow.
Yeah, so we joke that I married my stalker, but
that's a good joke. Well, it's weird. It's like a match made in heaven. I did a shoot of a lady here last week, and her husband was waiting in the lobby, and I was chatting with him. He's very friendly, and I asked him how long they were married. He said he was an author. He said she posted a comment on a thread I had on Facebook 8 years ago, and I knew instantly I was going to marry her. 2,000 miles apart. So it can happen. So you married your stalker, and similar to that story. But my next question to you, Shannon, I'm looking at your Facebook place, and there's a picture of you. You got 2 girls and a boy.
I do. Yeah, I'm a very busy mom of 3.
And your husband is ruggedly handsome. He's a Canadian. There he is. Good-looking family. So before we get into photography and marketing and whatever else, who's your favorite kid?
Oh,
what?
That's really funny. I don't have.
I'm joking.
I know all moms say that, but I just love all the different personalities of all of my kids. They just have each of them has their own little sparkle in different ways. But I will say the third one is the kicker. She's
cool.
It's like having 2 babies in one.
She's a firecracker.
She is a firecracker. Yes, she is.
I've noticed that with a lot of families, the youngest is often the fireball. Just a thing. It must be a birth order thing. So
I think it has something to do with that. Yeah.
So anyways, let's get into it. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask Shannon. You can watch the replays. You can watch all our replays. I don't know how many. We've done about 152 of these so far, right, John? We're having a blast.
Seems like it.
Yeah. And the first thing I want to ask you, Shannon, is give us a little bit of your synopsis. What got you into photography? How long have you been doing it? And sort of give us your bio, if you don't mind. Let's start there, and then maybe we'll dig down some back alleys.
Okay. I guess long story short is I was always an artist to begin with. My dad is a pencil artist, and my grandpa was an oil painter. And so art was just kind of ran through my blood from a very young age. And as I got into high school, I dabbled in photography a little bit, realized I really loved it. I thought it was kind of cool to see the portrait photographers around town doing what they do. Keep in mind, when I started, it was still very much all film photography. So I built a portfolio and then submitted it to the Art Institute of Seattle, where I got my degree in commercial photography. And that's actually where I got my first taste of digital photography. My first year was all working in the darkroom and processing film on my own. And then my second year was a little bit of, we were dabbling in digital. This is before Lightroom and anything else. I think it was like Photoshop 3 or something like that. So a lot of that was still brand new. The first digital camera I touched was, I believe, a Canon 10D. So if that kind of puts it into perspective a little bit,
it does.
A long time ago. After art school, honestly, I was completely drained of creativity because I had so many different projects that were all art focused. I just wanted a break. So I became a makeup artist for 6 years. And then after my trip to Europe, where I ended up meeting my husband, it kind of re-sparked my love for photography. And I came back around 2010 and dove right into business. I did pretty much everything when I started back into it, and I kind of actually had to reteach myself everything because the industry had changed so much, technology had changed so much, programs had changed so much. So I just basically retaught myself everything. Did everything, weddings, babies, and then finally settled into my love for children's fine art portraits. So
Mhm, mhm.
yeah,
That's where you're at now, right? It
yeah,
seems?
that's where I'm at now.
Yeah, yeah, that's really cool. So, what, last 10, 12 years, you pretty much is the time period that you started your own official business?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Do you have a studio?
I do. We actually opened our brick and mortar space here in Colorado Springs, right on one of the main streets, in the middle of the pandemic. So we were
Oh,
just
really?
coming out of the lockdowns, and everybody was still freaking out. And I remember going to the studio and making sure that everybody, to see the space, and landlord and everybody was making sure we had masks and whatnot. Um, you might have been a little bit crazy to do it in the middle of a pandemic, but it worked
Mhm.
out, and it's just grown by leaps and bounds. So it's been an amazing experience the last couple of years to have our
Yeah,
actual brick and mortar location.
good. Yeah, yeah, and what timing. Weird.
Yeah,
Who does that? I mean, really?
who'd have thought? Yeah, it's a God thing, I think.
What inspired you? What motivated you to, like, "Hey, yeah, let's commit to a commercial space," and did you buy a
Mhm.
building or did you rent?
So we were renting the space, and I think it was just kind of something that fell into our laps. A
Yeah,
good friend of
okay.
mine, a good client of mine, she has half of this building for
Uh-huh,
her salon, and she said, "Hey, there's a space in the building. Do you want to come look at it?" And I
right.
thought, well, it's not the right time. It's definitely not the right time. But you know what? Why not? I'll go in there. I'll take a peek. And I made my best friend, who is also a photographer, go with me.
Uh-huh,
Um, and we just kind of fell in love with it and decided that, I mean, why not, right? Take a
uh-huh.
chance, and if it falls apart, then lesson learned. If not, then
Yeah,
we can have something really great here. So we
that's
just kind of
amazing.
threw caution to the wind, and
Wow. Well,
now
you did marry your stalker, so this doesn't surprise me on the scale of things.
I know I know I make questionable decisions every now and then.
Yeah, there's gotta be something that you must have a gut feeling. Like, I always,
Sure.
if you would have talked, if I'd have known you back then, if you'd have talked to me and said, "Hey, Rob, I'm thinking about getting a studio here, commercial space," it kinda got, it wasn't something I planned, it was just kinda happened. I'd
Yeah.
say, "No, these things you gotta plan, you gotta have, like, I'm going to start a studio, then I'm gonna go look for a commercial space." When it's haphazard like that, it's just a random encounter.
Yeah.
However, maybe it was meant to be, and is that the feeling you get about this?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a saying that says something along the lines of, if it doesn't scare you, then it's probably not the right decision.
Uh-huh.
So I think having a little bit of healthy fear kind of going into it, it
Mhm,
usually means you're kind of headed in the right direction.
mhm,
And I'm a hustler too. I like to think that if I can make anything happen if I need to.
mhm,
Um, I work hard to make it
mhm,
happen, and so
mhm.
that's just kind of what I did. I wasn't ready to accept any type of failure, and I'm still not. So,
Yeah,
that's just
that
who I
that's
am, I
really good.
guess.
Well, I'm connecting the dots here, and I'm like, you're making so many solid points, and when you say you're a hustler and you're willing to take risks, and so many people are not willing to take risks and or go down roads where they're scared and
Sure.
or apprehensive. So something to be said about that and that entrepreneurial spirit. Okay, but I want to get back to that in a second, but I want to go back before the pandemic. Did you have a studio? Were you in business? Were you offering your services in your community and pretty much established?
Absolutely. So, we lived in California for a while,
Hmm.
and when I started back into digital photography, the whole thing was, oh, you have a digital camera, and you're just gonna give them all the files, and it's going to be cheap and easy and
Right, right,
quick money, right?
right.
That was the name of the game at that point. And so as I started to go do my business, right? So I had my business before I started having children. And then as I started to have children, and I was doing business this way, I was giving, gosh, like 60 digital files for, $200.
Hmm.
And I would get to the end of that money, and we would need more money, but the work kept building up, and I just
Right.
realized, well, it's not enough to just be a good photographer. You actually also have to be business smart. And there's
Hmm.
I wanted to say like the trend of IPS, in-person sales,
Mhm.
came around, but really it's not a trend. It's the old school way of doing business, and
Yep.
it's the old school way of doing business because it's the smart way to do business. There's listening to people who have done it for so long, and following their wisdom is just kind of we finally realized that just giving all the digital files wasn't doing anybody any good.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to see that the trend is progressing back to this in-person sales mentality and selling prints and preserving that work.
Yeah.
So what was nice is when we moved from California to Colorado, I was able to completely change my business structure.
Mhm.
Um, and I had dabbled into the idea of IPS before we left, but when we decided to move to Colorado, I said, well, I'm going to not accept anything than what's going to make me profitable and what I deserve for what I'm doing. But also
Mhm.
because my time is very valuable as a mom, as a parent, and um, with my kids. So I didn't even look at the market. I just did my numbers and what I needed to make me successful,
Mm.
and just went for it. And so it
Mm.
was kind of a smooth transition. And so now I
Nice.
guess I'm considered a boutique type photographer as far as pricing goes. And it's been pretty amazing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So you brought up so many points, and this idea about in-person sales
Sure.
is like a thing. I don't know if it was Larry, was it Sal Sincata or Larry Hertzberger who mentioned that, John, that said,
I think South Dakota, he does in-person sales for sure.
Yeah.
no, but they all, well, no, that's not the point. The point was he was saying that this is a thing. Well, this has been around for decades.
Mhm.
And now, but it's a thing with a lot of photographers. And
Yep.
you kind of went through that phase, Shannon, where
I
it
did.
was like 60 files for $200, which is like, when we saw all this coming, we're like, that's not a good model.
No,
Mm-mm.
Oh, you got to get in. I love in-person sales when they come in and, oh man, that's a moment.
it is.
But there's that whole challenge and strategy of, first of all, getting over that mindset of that's the way we do it. We burn, shoot and burn, shoot and burn. And in-person sales is not even on my radar. But I think a lot of younger photographers are scared of that selling thing.
Mhm.
So Shannon, if you could go back to uh, your 22-year-old self, or you're what, 28 now, so you're pretty young.
Yeah, exactly. It's only been about 5 years I've been doing this, so I'll take it.
How many years did you do the $200 pitch with 60 files? And would you go back and do it earlier if you could? Would you change things if you could go back in time?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a tricky question too, because the market was just so different at that point. It was
Mhm.
so different. And I was different. Being a young mom and reteaching myself all these things. At this
Right.
at that point, even though I had gone through college in art school for this, I knew obviously the art of it. Um, but as far as like the programs and the digital photography side of it, I really had to reteach myself. So I didn't think I was worthy of those types of prices, I think.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
Okay.
and as much as I hate to say it, I see it because I mentor a lot of people. Uh, as much as I hate to say it, but I feel like this is also more so a mentality for women than it is for men, because I've
Agreed.
mentored men who are getting into this IPS idea of photography, and they're still fairly new to photography in general and compositing and all that stuff, but they accept that they need to make a living at this, whereas women
Mhm.
are like, well, I'm just kind of paying for our vacations or whatnot. And so
Right.
they second guess their worth. And
Mhm.
so, but the way I present it to a lot of the women that I talk to is, well, how much does it cost me, or is it going to cost me to take you away from that soccer game where your kid scores his first goal? Right?
Mhm.
Let's put a price on that. What is your time worth, really?
Yeah.
And so those are some of the things that I was willing to miss. So
Mhm.
by charging more and having the IPS process, it allows me to run a profitable business and still be very present in my family's lives. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't even know if I answered your question,
You did. You did.
but
Yeah.
I'm
No, it's
clearly
good.
very passionate about IPS in general, and
Yeah.
just the mentality that people have, and valuing yourself as a photographer and valuing your art. And regardless of what skill level you are at, it's important to also be business smart and do those numbers, because your
Yeah.
time is valuable for your family and what that
Yeah.
gift you're giving to people. So
Yeah.
I'm all about some IPS. I will tell people all day long to value yourself, do
Yeah.
the numbers, be business smart.
Yeah, you keep saying you have to retrain yourself, and you mentioned your formal education in photography and art. And I'm going to take a guess here that you probably didn't learn a lot on selling and business strategies in those environments and that
That's
part of your
correct.
life.
Yeah.
And something they out to really bring to the forefront. When I teach at the local high schools, I'm often every year I'm asked to go do career day, all the grade 10 students. I'm the photographer, and I'm there with the cops are there and the doctors, and I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? I mean, who has a career in photography? And I tell them there's no careers in photography. You got to treat it like a business, get a business degree. So that's what I
Absolutely.
encourage
Yep.
them to do, because you can learn it on your own, really. However, you've got you have a lot of artisticness in your product, and it's pretty obvious. And I want to kind of segue into that part of this discussion if we can. And you
Mhm.
said that your family has had a lot of your grandfather was a pencil artist.
My dad is a pencil artist, and my great grandfather was an oil painter,
Nice.
and
So
then
you,
multiple photographers throughout my family as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that art thing was sort of in your DNA. It was a natural thing for you, I guess. After high school, I'm going to pursue a career in art.
Absolutely. Yep. I think at one point, because I was also a pencil artist, that's essentially where I started. Um,
Mhm.
I thought about working for Disney. That I was like,
Oh
I'm gonna
yeah.
be an animator. And then just kind of as my art progressed, as life progressed, I um, found photography and decided I really loved it, and a lot of this imaginative stuff really
Yeah.
started when I started having children.
Oh really? Eh?
Yeah, absolutely. My kids have been so much of my inspiration. In fact, the first composite I ever did was because of my daughter,
Right.
who, at 3-year-old, my oldest, she came into my office and said, "Mom, there's a lion in our hallway and he's going to eat us." And so my first ever composite is of her in the hallway, sticking her head out her bedroom door with these big eyes and
Yeah.
this surprised face, and there's a lion in the hallway, and it's a horrible composite.
Yeah.
But I'll never go back and redo it because it's a timestamp of where I
Yeah.
started, and it's just such a memory.
Yeah.
Um, and so even now we still do, a lion picture, fairly often for her. And it's become this theme. And if you scroll back on it, there you can see it. Actually, there was one that won an award recently for Professional Photographers of America, and it was her and the lion, and it just kind of depicted them in her room, and she's doing his hair and putting his bows and his mane and stuff. But you can see the original image is hanging on the wall in the image, and it just
Right.
there's a ruler on the wall that marks how they've
There
grown
it is.
together, and then a drawing of her and the lion. And this has just been an ongoing theme, and it's just kind of my tribute to where I started as a composite artist.
Oh man, this is
Yeah.
I love it.
amazing.
So I've grown a lot since that first
No, I mean,
composite, for sure.
this is powerful stuff.
Yeah.
This is a story. Correct, guide me down the right trail on this one. When you're talking with a client, like you charge a lot of money for a custom portrait. I checked out your prices, and it's in the
Absolutely.
thousands of dollars just to get you just to do the session.
Mhm.
And I'm like, kudos to you. That's awesome. That's what you got to do. And when somebody comes in and they have an original, and the first sort of, you have a consultation. John, can you put that image back up there?
Sure can.
When you're having a consultation with clients, do you tell them that story of this? Because that to me is, everybody, especially moms, would resonate with that story. That's
Mhm.
the story of your child.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I necessarily tell them this story. I think that when clients come to me, they're more excited to tell me their story
Okay.
and see what my vision is for their story.
Okay.
Um, yeah, it's really interesting to listen to people and what they bring to the table, and what they have envisioned for themselves. Sometimes they
Mhm.
have a really clear idea of what they want.
Okay.
I would say that the majority of the time they say, "Here's my story. This is what happened to me. What do you envision this looking like?" And they want to see. They
Right.
trust me to bring it to life for
Okay.
them, and I think that that's one of the coolest things about doing what I get to do, is because when they
Mhm.
start to tell me their story, I it just pops into my head, and it just starts to kind of come to life. And through talking
Yeah.
to them a little bit more about what's possible, we dig a little deeper, and eventually it just finds this life of its own.
That's
Um,
amazing.
yeah, yeah. You know, and it's about the little things that kind of tie an image together. So no
Yeah.
one ever notices, but I hid a sock under the bed. And
Oh yeah, you can see it
it's just to
right
add a
there,
little extra life and reality to
Where's the sock?
right where
just
I'm circling there with the
yeah,
cursor.
right
I
by the
don't
leg of the bed. It's
I
just
don't
tucked underneath there.
in the
Uh,
shadows?
Yeah,
what's that?
right in the shadow here, right here.
Yep.
Okay.
Let me
Cool.
see if I can zoom in. I don't think I can though. No,
That's
I
Yeah,
want to
amazing.
so
zoom in.
it's the little things that kind of add a little bit of extra life to an image. So
So on that note, when they're coming to you, it's assumed, I would imagine, that they already know what kind of that's the direction. Like they're not coming in cold. They know your brand. They have expectations of cost, process, sort of roughly speaking, the ultimate end goal. You're gonna create something very unique, artistic with your special touch to it. So when they come in to tell you those stories and these ideas, they have all that in mind already, correct?
usually. So I had and it's not just children either, actually. So I had a lady come in, and she was young. She's about 23 or 24 years old. But she has endometriosis, and has had multiple surgeries for her endometriosis. And so
Mhm.
I think it was 14 at this point. So she can't have children. And so she wanted me to tell her story. And so we came in, and she wanted to show her scars
Okay.
and different things. And so we ended up building this image where there was just different vines and stuff kind of growing out of the scars in her body. Um, and it became a beautiful, really beautiful piece. And from the vines were growing 14 different um, flowers. It
Right.
might not actually be on my website at the moment just yet, but it's definitely on my Facebook page. But she just told me that she wanted to do something that represented what she had been through, and she didn't want people to necessarily feel sorry for her. She wanted to represent growth and beauty and femininity, and so that's what we ended up coming up with. But yeah, it's just cool to get to hear people's stories and
Yeah.
find a way to bring it to life.
Yeah.
Um, Also on my Facebook page, there is these twins that their mom brought them to me, and she had adopted them directly from the NICU, and they were born addicted to heroin. And because of
Wow.
that, they actually had a lot of different struggles throughout their life. And these were their 16-year-old pictures. Yeah, their bottom third row down on the right is the one I'm to my right, other one. I'm like, all right, can't. I'm like, are we backwards with the camera? But yeah, that was a fun dance one. So, anyways, these twins, they
Is that them?
no, there's a scale right there. Yep.
There we go.
This one?
So yeah, that one. So they had so this was one of their 16-year-old portraits. And they had gone through so much. So we did a whole bunch of different elements that kind of represented these different struggles that they had to overcome in just the short 16 years. So there's the x-ray back there because they have scoliosis. The
Wow.
letters are backwards because they also struggle with dyslexia,
Wow.
learning issues, autism, which is the puzzle pieces. But the mom also
Medication.
wanted to have, a sense of goodness as well, right? So they're
Mhm.
obviously on the heavier side of the scale where, it represents that they're doing great, right? They're in
Yeah.
the light, they have
Yeah.
flowers around them. So I really love the contrast of the good and the bad, and the light and the dark, but also throughout the theme of my images, you'll see I love the contrast of cool and
Mhm.
warm tones. And
Yeah.
that's yeah. So but I love it. I think it's an honor to get to tell people's stories in this way. And not everybody gets to say they do get to do something they love so much on a
Yeah.
daily basis. So it's really cool. And a lot of times people will come to me and ask, I need some of your art on my walls. So they
Okay.
realize it's more than a portrait. They describe
Right.
it as art. And when people book this, when I'm describing it to them as well, I tell them I consider it more of like a commissioned painting.
True. That's a good one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
One of a kind. when they come to you for something like that last one that you were just explaining to us, powerful story. Do you there's a print that is created for their wall?
Mhm. Yeah,
What?
absolutely. So within the price of, and I call these my imagination sessions. So
Yeah.
within the price of their imagination session is included a piece of art, 20 by 30, so that they have
Okay.
a nice, beautiful print. And for those particular images, I actually don't offer the digital files. I do for my
No.
other sessions.
Okay.
But for those ones, because it is such a specific commission, one of a kind
Mhm.
piece, I don't
Yeah.
actually offer the digital files.
It's amazing you said that people contact you and say, "I need a piece of your art on."
Yeah.
It's like people that get tattoos. They get this. It's almost like an addiction, you know.
Sure.
And I've kind of noticed that as a behavior, and there must be something very fulfilling for them when they get that. I mean, the work is stunning. There's that. It's just not a straight up portrait.
Right.
And I could see where, if I had something like that in my home, I would just look at it every day and I would just take it in, and it would just be something that would be very positive, very fulfilling. Uh,
Absolutely.
kind of the way somebody with a tattoo would go, "Hey, look at my new tat," and for like 6 months or more, or they're just all proud of it, and then a year down the road they go get another one. That's like an
Yeah,
addiction. It's an affliction.
absolutely.
You want your clients to be addicted to your art.
Absolutely. I have clients who come back regularly
Yeah.
for different pieces or different concepts, or, maybe they'll do one image of one child, and then they'll come back when a child reaches that same age, and they'll do another one. And so
Hmm.
it's almost like a tradition that they have, to
Yeah.
come back and get more art. And I do, obviously, what I describe as just my traditional fine art portraits that don't have composite elements. Um,
Yeah.
and when describing what a composite is or isn't, as far as
Yeah.
like taking that price jump from one of my
Hmm.
traditional sessions to my imagination sessions,
Yeah.
is I usually tell them if it's bigger than a butterfly, then it falls under composite.
All right. That's a good way to. I love it. So your regular sessions, not your imagination sessions, I would imagine are the bulk of what you do.
Yeah, yeah. I do offer, I usually have at least one ongoing composite happening at
Right.
any given time, but the
Cool.
bulk of what I do is going to be my fine art sessions. And while
Yeah.
people know me mostly for my work with children, I do also do a lot of single subject type things, and also some families. So I do maternity, and I do seniors, and indoor and outdoor families, couples. Yeah, so
Hmm.
there's some of my family stuff.
Yeah, I noticed that on your website. It's
Mhm.
quite. I got to ask you.
Yeah.
I noticed this earlier. There's a picture of two. It looks like two girls, and just you see they're wearing a prom dress or a wedding gown. You see their backs and their spinal cords and what.
Yes.
What is that?
Okay, so that was one of my clients' stories. That might have been under imagination sessions, but
It was.
I
Was
think
it?
it might have been.
Okay.
She actually had scoliosis. I guess technically she still does have
Right there, John.
but it's
Right there.
corrected.
You went there. Right there.
There we go. So this is actually the same girl that I composited together, and her mom wanted to kind of document her journey. And
Wow.
so obviously the one on the left is her before the surgery, and then
Oh.
right is after the surgery. Um,
Okay.
and so I was very also specific about how I wanted her hair done as well, and
Uh-huh.
just to kind of tie in with that theme.
So
So
this is falling under imagination, but it's not really as intensely
sure.
with so many elements the way the normal or typical
Yeah,
imagination session would be.
absolutely. Right.
But
So a little bit less elements, but still um, kind of along the same lines, because it is very much painted and very much composited.
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Full image.
Do you get? I'm going to imagine you get very little resistance to these sessions, these imagination sessions. They're very high price, and you're just right up front on the website what you charge for them.
Yeah.
And so I would imagine the people that come to you and or inquire at least at that level, I would imagine a large part of them or a large number of them already know you or have some sort of a
Sure.
connection with you.
Yeah.
So there's little resistance. But do you get any that kind of go, "Oh, why is it so expensive?" Or is that
You
just sort
know
of not
what?
even on your radar?
I actually don't, to be honest with you. People are usually very, they see my work and they either say, "Oh, well, I can't afford it now, but I'm going to save up for it."
Right.
or they're like, okay, let's do it. I'm ready for it. I
Good.
really don't have anybody that looks at it and says, oh, well, that's overpriced,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I think you
Good.
can see the quality of the work. You can see how much goes into it.
Yeah.
And I'm also really big about, talking about what I do and how I
Mhm.
print and why I print. And so
Mhm.
I think that constant conversation on my pages and promoting myself, but also promoting, my accolades as well, validates me to my clients. And so I really don't get very much resistance on that at all.
Yeah.
So,
You know
which I know I'm lucky because I think that I think a lot of people do,
Yeah.
because there's definitely a market out there still that they don't understand what all goes into creating a portrait like this, or
Yeah.
just photographers in general and what they charge. But it really comes down to having those conversations, wherever you're promoting yourself, and people
Yeah.
find you and they're like, okay, I'm going to save up for it. But
Yeah.
and I think having it just kind of out there in on my website as well, so people can read that before even having to message me,
Yeah.
then they come find me when they are ready.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. That's often been an area of contention with a lot of photographers, whether or not you should be upfront with your price.
Sure.
I think you should be. It just, to me, it avoids any confusion down the road. But just be
Absolutely.
right up front. So you don't. There's no pictures of your studio, is there, on Facebook or?
You know what? I don't
No, I
think
was looking for it. I couldn't find any.
we do have a Facebook page for Squires Productions Co-op Studio. And so we did a separate page because of the just because I am sharing it with my best friend. So there is one on there is that Squires Productions Co-op Studio. And I
Mhm.
think there's some in there that you can kind of see the studio space, which we have a pretty unique little studio space as well, because when we
Yeah.
got the space, what it was originally was a place called Window World. And so there's
Oh,
facades in the building. So there's different doorways and windows and everything. So it gives it a
nice.
sense of buildings. And we just painted everything white. Um, and people ask us all the time if we use the doors and the windows as props, and we actually don't.
No.
But we do we kind of went with that theme, and we have
Yeah.
street signs, and we have like a street lantern, in our lobby area.
Yeah.
And so we just kind of went with that, and it's just a fun little thing. But that's one of the things that people ask us is, did you build
Yeah.
this like this, or did you just happen upon it? So we really got very lucky with the space when we found it, and
Yeah.
loved
It
the
was right. It
yeah.
was it
And
was
actually
right.
behind the doors of the facades is actually our gear closet, our tech closet, storage, stuff like
Yeah.
that.
How many square feet is it?
I think it's just, I think it's right at 2,500 square feet.
Oh, it's pretty big.
Yeah. And we have
Mhm.
about 20-foot ceilings.
Your studio can devour my studio. I've got like 800 square feet.
Sure.
Um, yeah. So your best friend, you keep mentioning your best friend. So you're sharing this place with your best friend who's a
I
photographer?
am. Yeah, she's also a really great photographer. Our styles are actually pretty similar. And so people ask often if that's a point of contention at all. And it really isn't.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Our clients actually go often swap back and forth, because she specializes in families. She loves families. Not
Right.
that I don't love families, but I really find that I get the most inspiration from single subject portraits.
Okay.
And so they kind of bounce back and forth between the two of us. We are priced
Yeah.
very similarly, and we often use the majority of our stuff that we use are from the same portrait labs. And so it's just a really great um, situation altogether, right? And you just get to
Yeah.
have this adventure with one of your best friends.
Maybe we'll have her on soon.
Yeah, Jessica Valia, she's fantastic.
Her name's Jessica.
Yeah. Give her a week because she just had her wisdom teeth pulled. So
Oh, that's a big operation. So
it is.
yeah, that'd be cool to get her on there. So yeah, that was my first question. Is it's tricky to get into any kind of a partnership situation, especially with a
I've
best
been
friend.
there,
So
so I
it's tricky,
shared
man.
I shared my old studio with two other photographers, and me and one of the other guys hit heads too much, and it's
Yeah.
It's
hard.
like having a roommate,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's fantastic, and sometimes it's just not
Yeah.
gonna work. But this happens to work pretty well for us.
Good.
Do you know Sandy Pooch?
Of course, yeah.
Cool.
She's not far from me.
Yeah, cool, cool. She's
I
still
think it has
going,
to
eh?
do with the Colorado air, because it seems like most of the guests we get nowadays are from Colorado. We had that one realty photographer. He was in the Colorado area too.
Okay. There's a lot of talent here in Colorado. Our local guild for the Professional Photographers of America, we actually have multiple artists within our guild who make it to the top 10 in their categories every year at a national and international level. Myself and then a wildland photographer were both on what is called the World Cup. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that. So I know that there's the Canada Professional Photographers Association, correct? And so that is a branch of they participate in the Photographic World Cup every year as well. So that actually they just did that in Rome. And my good friend here, we were both on Team USA. Do you know who Cass Van Horn is?
No.
Noelle Mirabella. She's up there. She does beautiful work, and she's often in World Cup from Canada.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
You have a lot of great artists up there too. Diane Hanna, she's fantastic as well.
We're gonna have to hire Shannon as a show producer to help us get guests.
I know. I know a handful of people.
It's the beer and cold weather. We're all trying to stay warm. So
I know, right? Yeah.
Yeah, fascinating. So where was I? I wanted to ask you something a little bit of behind the color theory. This is something that I've been ruminating about more or less. Yeah. And I noticed this in the series on Amazon Prime, the series Outer Range.
Okay.
Are you familiar with it?
I don't think so.
I don't watch much of the TV period, but I'm watching it. I'm always looking for a good, interesting series, especially one that's based in reality, which that one is not. It's total fantasy sci-fi. But my wife loves sci-fi, so we're watching it. But I noticed it, and in about the third episode, I told my wife, I said, "Did you notice there's two colors in like 99% of the shots?" I love cinematography. Yeah. I watch a lot of YouTube videos on cinematography, but I noticed that there was two colors. Cold, a little bit, and warm. Cold and warm, cold and warm. There's always blue. They're wearing blue, always. Yeah. And the background's warm. And I'm like, that's done on purpose. This is not,
exactly.
So, and you mentioned something about you like, especially the picture of the twins, that cold versus warm contrast, which is a beautiful, visually appealing look, very balancing. And, so is that something you pursue on purpose when you're trying to formulate a balance between the colors, these opposite colors on the color wheel, cold versus warm? Any insights on that?
I think that just as an artist, I think I don't even consciously do it. Okay. I think it's just where I default to as an artist and what my preferences are. Obviously in cinematography, there's a lot of that does lend itself to the style of the show, the mood of the show, what they're trying to, the brand of something, all of that kind of ties into what you're, presenting to your clients. I'm thinking of Ozark. I started watching Ozark, but I didn't actually end up finishing it. But that whole thing has this moody, dark, blue, gray cast to it.
Right.
Because it does have like this eerie, feeling to it overall.
Right.
I do it subconsciously, but it is a trend I started to notice, and with myself is I love that, even if it's not blues and oranges, it's greens and reds, and I just love that contrast of the two of them, because it just pops to me subconsciously.
It's like a dissonance, but it makes perfect sense. And anyways, that's just something I've noticed in that series in particular. I think it's being done a lot in movies. It's possibly being overdone.
Yeah. I subscribe to a video thing now, and they're video 101 type of thing, and they do teach you that the sort of teal colors against the yellows and stuff, and it works really well.
Nice.
Well, nice. They create moods. Color creates different moods. So
your favorite session is the individual child, more or less. That's what you had mentioned earlier.
I do. Yeah.
Because I have that on my list of questions to ask you. Favorite thing to photograph? You already mentioned that. You mentioned also darkroom. Now I'm going to guess you were in school late 90s, early 2000s.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, and like digital came out in 2000. That's when it started. That's when my studio went digital. I was one of the first in Canada to go digital. It was like, but I was a freak, I was like, who the hell does that? But I did it. And but what really helped me out a lot was decades of black and white darkroom experience at a very high level. And so you said something about the darkroom, which I'm kind of glad you mentioned that, because they taught you that in school. How valuable was that for you?
Oh gosh, I feel like I'm so lucky to have that background, because there's generations coming about that have no idea why the settings are designed the way they are on a digital camera. And it all goes back to film photography. You know,
Yeah.
that's why they are there. So I feel lucky to have that, because it is kind of dying off, unless, you know, I feel like film right now is kind of like a hipster thing to do. You know, but there are a lot of people still holding on to dear life with, and I have a Hasselblad sitting up on my shelf up here.
Nice.
But I don't use it, right? Because digital is so easy. But I feel like those who are holding on to it dearly, and I think it is kind of picking up a little bit. I don't think it will ever be what it used to be.
No.
But I feel very lucky to have that original knowledge of, and the feel, the smell of being in a dark room, right? I feel very privileged and very lucky to have had that background, because I was just on the line. I mean, if I had gotten into it just a couple of years later, I probably wouldn't have had that opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's almost in a sense you'd recommend somebody starting out, especially a younger person, if they had a chance to take something to learn that, probably say, yeah, do it.
Yeah, if you can, absolutely. If you have the opportunity to, you know, get a medium format camera and go out and do it, there's, you can't replicate that with digital at all.
No, it's good.
As
It's
much as
good.
you can try, you can't.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of similarities to vinyl. Vinyl records are really, really popular. Like, they're making way more of a comeback than, say, film is, but it's there. We're down to the last 15 minutes, and I've got 89,000 questions, but I'm gonna narrow it down to a few. If you turn to your left, Shannon, there's a whiteboard behind you. What is that?
So this is, so recently I actually just created an educational platform. So this is my attempt to get organized before I started doing that. I since switched to a couple of other online programs to help me organize that aspect of things. So this is actually not even up to date. That was my attempt of getting everything out of my brain and onto something tangible. So I could start that process of creating this educational platform.
It's a good idea. So it's one way to put your thoughts down on paper.
Absolutely. You know, and with my ideas too, I always have a sketchbook around that I sketch my ideas, because if it stays in there, it goes away eventually. And so I have to get it out, whether it's write down the ideas or sketch down the ideas. And that just kind of helps me kind of stay organized and come back to those genius ideas.
Definitely.
That whiteboard we have the same one, and for years and years and years we've used it, and we always write out the next day's events. So my wife would do all that, and red meant session, and green meant sales session, and yada yada yada.
Yep. My husband's a little bit more technical than I am, and so he insists on things like that to keep me organized.
What does he do?
He's in IT. He does. He's a sysadmin for a nonprofit organization here in Colorado Springs. So yeah,
he looks like a lumberjack.
He does. He definitely does. Yeah.
He looks like a really nice guy, though, especially because he's Canadian. We're from Canada,
right? That's just Canadians, right? That's you know. I always tell everybody, if you want to find a good guy, go to Canada.
We're too polite, though, some of us. So what part of Canada is he from?
He's about an hour outside of Winnipeg.
Okay. Winterpeg. He's that's a good area. Manitoba, good area to be from.
Yep.
That's like the Midwest in the United States. It's people are salt of the earth. No wonder he has that look, and no wonder he met and married such a fine woman, even though he was a stalker. So,
you know, at the time I was living in California, so I'm sure his parents had lots of questions at that point.
Especially if they watch this episode.
California girl at all, but I actually grew up in Nevada. But I'm sure when he presented this ideas to his parents, they might have raised some eyebrows.
So I was going to ask you what's working now, but I know what's working now. You got a new studio. That's what's working now. You're doing all these sessions. You got an amazing website. You got an amazing array of products and services. You obviously have some position in your community where they now know you as not the girl who's got the $200 60 files
Correct.
That's not the girl that you want to be, the lady you want to be. And so that's all fine and dandy and good. Let's talk now about something that's pretty obvious. If anybody goes to your website, you have this whole section about, I got to ask you, first of all, sorry, what does your tattoo mean? Veni Vidi
Seppi. So comes from Veni Vidi Vici, which is I came, I saw, I conquered.
Yeah.
So it says, I came, I saw, I captured.
Oh. I love it.
I know, right? I didn't want to put a camera. That's too cliche. So we went with,
You put a picture of you with a big giant lens.
Yes, exactly. I didn't want to do anything quite that cliche. So
no. Now that this is out there, everyone's going to do it, and you're going to be cliche. That's going to be cliche, but you're
probably right. Yeah.
You're the one who started it, so we'll give you full credit.
And I'll just put a tattoo of a camera on my forehead.
Yeah, it's documented here. So if I need to, I'll just say, see, I was the original.
So you have a whole mentoring thing, the Shannon Squires Creative Academy. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And
yeah, absolutely. So what I was kind of seeing in the industry is a lot of people, they do these memberships, they do videos and all that stuff. But the thing is they buy a video, they toss it into a hard drive somewhere, and then they never actually commit to the education. What I wanted is to give people a high-end education where they were going to actually take the time to invest in themselves and their education. So I wanted to set it up, specifically the membership. I wanted to set that up like as if you were investing in a semester at college.
Wow.
You have, you buy a semester, essentially. You have access to the library for those 3 months. And I tell people, I'm like, if you don't have the time to commit to this now, then do not sign up. I want you to sign up when you are ready to invest in yourself and dive into the learning and watching the courses that I have in there for everybody. Because I really want people to learn. I'm passionate about teaching. In addition to doing the actual art, I want people to grow. And this was kind of my way to do that. And create, and offer what I do to people and teach them what I do. I don't leave anything off of the table. I kind of give it my all. And this was kind of like my baby that I created in the last year. And I'm pretty proud of it. And yeah, so it's
amazing.
Become a magical thing. So it's just growing every day.
So you're also working with hold on, Richard Sturdivant.
Yeah.
So he's pretty well known in the industry. He's got such a high-end look to his art. And on the poster I see of you guys, photographed to embellish fine art mixed media originals. Are you doing all mixed, or is it all like when you do your composites and your creatives, your imagination sessions for your clients? Is any of it mixed media, or is it all? Are you using Corel or just Photoshop? Can you sort of explain that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. So when I am doing my composites, I am doing all of that in Photoshop. All of that happens in Photoshop.
Okay, cool.
And then depending on what the client wants, normally I print through one of my labs and we have it framed, and that's usually where it ends. What Richard and I are doing are really kind of pushing the idea of fine art and taking this, offering that one step further to clients, whether it be just a regular portrait, or if you just want to take your wildlife images to that next level. So what's going to happen when he's here is we are going to focus on not only editing in Photoshop, but then we're also going to be doing some printing and then embellishing those prints with the mixed media. So we're going to have pastels and color pencils, and you can do paints, and we're going to show people how to do that. So if you do want to offer your clients at the end of what you've created a real truly unique piece of art that does have, beyond a digital type of print, it actually has tangible products on top of it that you can offer to your client and take it to that next level with offering them a unique one of a kind piece of art for their homes. And so that's what we're teaching people that are coming to our workshop, is how to do that and how to start offering this to your clients if that's something you want to incorporate to generate a little bit more income.
That's amazing. Or somebody who would love to go down that avenue, sort of along the same line as where you are as an artist. And do you have to be an artist? Like my art skills are I can't even use a Wacom. Do you use Wacom, by the way?
I do.
Yeah.
I love I have to actually with all
Yeah.
the things that I do, like there's that monster picture. I drew them all by hand, every little hair. So
No
having
kidding.
the Wacom tablet allows
Wow.
me to do, and being a pencil artist, it's easier for me
Yeah.
to do this
Mhm.
than to, work with, this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I love my tablet. No, I wouldn't say that you need to have any type of an art background, because once you're
Mm-hmm.
printing your portraits, you
Mm-hmm.
essentially have something to trace over, right?
Yeah,
So
true.
you just need to look at the details and the colors and decide what colors you want to add to it that's going to make that pop. But
Yeah.
I really, what it comes down to is you're kind of tracing over your image that you've created already.
You're not really painting from scratch, so you're almost paint by number, sort of. There's lines there, and you're adding to it. You just said the word add, so you're
Yep.
enhancing it and giving it that sort of layer of paint, so it has a painterly look to it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You're embellishing what's already there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What do you think, John? Can you handle it, being a painter slash photographer?
I don't think you'd like any of my paintings. That's for sure.
It sounds
Like, I
pretty.
was gonna ask that because when you see the ones with the monster, or the ones with the lion we were looking at, or even the one with the little baby with the bear, where
Yeah.
you get the backgrounds, or where you get the bear or the lion, if you drew them yourself, if they're from a photo, or how you got those.
Yeah. So if it's like a realistic creature like a bear or a lion, I can usually find those in stock photography. I
Mhm,
use Shutterstock quite a bit. I use Pixel Squid quite a bit.
mhm.
Realistic elements, usually Shutterstock is my go-to. As far as the monsters go, I drew those by hand from scratch.
Nice.
And it's funny because when I started doing it, I took a picture of a soccer ball and a pear just so I could have the general shape of how I wanted this monster to be and how I wanted him structured. And so that kind of gave me the build of him before I started to draw and color
Uh-huh,
around him.
uh-huh.
And then he just kind of came to life. And I'm really enjoying building characters from scratch. I think that's a fun thing, which
Yeah,
is interesting because it kind of ties back into what I said originally when I was a kid, how I wanted to work for Disney and be an animator. So
yeah. Full circle,
full
full
circle with it.
circle.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
But no regrets. I bet there's
no regrets.
nothing but straight up pure gratitude for the position that you have. I mean, you got to be a hustler and a risk taker. I mean, really, you mentioned you're a
It's true.
hustler. You are the mother of your third born. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, that was very true. I think people, in recent years, I've gotten some accolades and different things for what I've done, and I
Hmm.
think that a lot of people think that it looks easy,
Yeah,
and I remind people that this is actually very much not easy. I've been doing this. You have to remember that I didn't start 2
yeah,
years ago when I started winning awards. I started 23 years ago. And it's been this progression of practice, 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 trial and error, and just finding what works for me, what fuels my soul as an artist.
yeah.
Um, and that being said, everything was done while still raising 3 small children. So
Amazing.
yeah,
Yeah, many, many more good years ahead of you. So,
absolutely.
Mhm.
Richard Sturdivant, if we dropped your name, we're going to hit him up to get him on this, and we're going to drop your name. Is that okay?
He's absolutely Richard is a very dear friend of mine. So yeah, he actually was originally my mentor. Um,
Okay.
I was already teaching at that point compositing, but I wanted to take it to the next level.
Okay.
I think that you should never stop learning, never
No.
stop pursuing to learn new things. And Richard was the one I reached out to, and I didn't really know much about him at the time, but I saw that he was pretty good at compositing. So I reached out to
Hmm.
him, and he is like a big brother to me at this point. And there is nobody like Richard. He is he is one of a kind. He is one
Cool.
of a kind, and he is an amazing human.
We had a few months ago Larry Herzberger on. He does something similar about the Santa pictures, the
Yeah.
Christmas theme.
Yeah,
Are you familiar with Larry?
I am. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very similar, very high end, high art, and
Mhm.
charges a ton of money. This is a whole fascinating area of photography to see this come to life. And
Absolutely.
It's so good. He does it all year round. He's getting ready to do Christmas in July. That's how good his stuff is. And people buy the stuff in the summertime for
Yes,
Christmas.
they do. Yes, they do. People that do Santa and they do it really well. They're all Santa all year long. So
Oh,
It's like your stuff. It's artwork. It's not just something you buy and just put up every now and then and take it down during season. That's artwork. So when you do your stuff,
absolutely.
people want that. Like you said, they'll just buy it for artwork.
it's a conversation piece when people walk into the room. So that picture of the twins is they're taking down their TV and replacing it with that.
So it's therapeutic, I'm going to guess, to a degree too. That's sort of the sense that I get. So
it absolutely is.
So if somebody came to you and gave you $100 million, what would you build?
Oh, what would I build?
Yeah.
Oh, I would build. Well, I probably don't need 100 million to do this, but I would definitely build my dream location / studio area, and then I would. I guess it's also not building, but I'd travel more.
Okay.
I would build my dream studio space.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Probably travel with your family, with your kids. So good.
Absolutely.
So cool.
Absolutely.
So I had another question that was going to segue beyond that. Now I can't remember what it was.
You didn't write it down.
I do. I have a lot. I have a bunch written down, but I gotta narrow it down to the top.
See, I always got to keep him in line sometimes.
Yeah.
What's the worst advice you've ever had?
The worst advice I've ever had.
Would you like to come on NoBS?
No. Oh gosh, the worst advice I've ever had.
$200, 60 files. Somebody must have plopped that into your brain.
Yeah, I think that you're probably right. I think that I don't even know who even told me that, but I think one of my best friends, she's like, "Hey, let's do this photography thing." And this is after I had been out of it for a while. I'm like, "Okay, let's do it." And I think she even said, "Oh, this will be really easy. We just give them the files and it's like no big deal." And so that probably is right up there.
This will be easy.
This will be easy. Yeah. I mean, said no one ever except for my best friend who got me into this. And she doesn't even do this anymore. But my other best friend, not the one I'm in the studio with, but
I figured.
Yeah, I think that's one of them. I wish I have fantastic parents who just supported me through all of it. So, and I don't even have a story of where my parents told me I should get a real job or anything, anything like that. Right. Even my husband's been so incredibly supportive of all of this. And so I've been very blessed and very lucky to have very supportive people. So not very many people have tried to steer me in the wrong direction as far as advice goes.
Lots of support.
Tons of support. It's, I built this essentially solo, but with a lot of support from many, many people.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, you're very strong, you're sweet, wholesome, lovable, all of those things. So I could see where people would find it easy to support you in a sense. That's what my gut feeling and intuition tells me.
Oh,
and on that, I'm not trying to butter you up or anything. Well, maybe I am. But let me ask you this question. We'll close off with two quick questions, sort of fire these out there. What beliefs do you hold dearly that the world or a large part of the world might think that you're insane for holding those beliefs?
Oh gosh, for those beliefs. I believe in giving back. I don't know if people would think that that's insane. But I also, and maybe this isn't even insane either, but I do have a lot of faith. I couldn't, obviously, everything that I've done along the way, I feel like it has been a God thing, to be honest with you. So that's where a lot of my faith is. Some obviously wouldn't necessarily agree with it, but it's definitely where my foundation lies. And so, giving back. I hold nothing back when I teach. And I think that some people worry about that. But the truth is regardless of what I teach and what I show people, they'll never do it the same way I do it.
Nice.
No secrets there, but
cool.
Give it all.
That's a really good answer. And well, okay. Last question. What's your favorite movie?
What's my favorite movie? Oh, one of my most favorite movies and is called Hero. And I don't think Quentin Tarantino produced it, but he did bring it from Japan. And it is all in Japanese. And I think the reason I really, really like it, and this ties back into cinematography, is it's about a couple of assassins trying to assassinate the emperor. And with each storyline, there's a different color representing that storyline. And so it's very, very visually appealing, very cinema. I mean, it's a masterpiece cinematography wise, but it ties into those colors that I really like and that I'm really drawn to. And it's just visually amazing, very well done movie. So that's definitely one of them.
I'm going to be checking that one out.
You definitely should. Yeah. It has subtitles, so you have to read it, but it's
I love subtitles.
good.
My wife can't stand them, but I love subtitles.
Yeah, don't do any of the voiceover ones. You have to do it actually in Japanese.
Funny how some people take the subtitles really easy and some people don't.
It's true.
They find it aggravating. So,
well, I hate because I'll read them out loud to her. I don't know if she's watching them or not.
John, you just got to learn to keep quiet. We're trying to watch a movie here. So, well, thanks for joining us, Shannon. I'd love to have you back in about 8, 9, 10, 12 months or so, catch up.
Absolutely.
If you don't mind. And I appreciate you coming here. John found you. I don't know where he found you. He saw you somewhere and he just
I found her. I started following you somewhere. I don't know if it was Instagram or something. I don't know how I came across your page sometime. And I'm like, I love this stuff. I'm going to look at more into it. And I started following you. And then I started following you on Facebook. And then I told Rob, I said, this person's stuff is amazing. We got to get her on here. So that's when I sent you the message. And I adore your stuff. I think the whole imagination one is what got me. Like, I'm looking at your children's stuff too, and it's amazing, but just the imagination stuff just got me. It put me in like Rob's fairy portraits that he does, and like you said with hers, Larry's Christmas one, it's that niche that nobody else in your area does, and it's going to garner that attention, and that's what I loved about it, I think. And just the whole painterly look of it. It's like, we got to get her on here for sure. So
thank you.
That's why I hounded you.
Thank you. Yeah, kids are everything is right with this world. Just the things that they say, their imagination, their kindness, their just openness to everything. And so I think that's part of why I love kids so much, and why I love telling those stories through my portraits. So,
well, with me, it's more, I'm finding everybody in photography these days, the newer generation, they're all doing the same thing over and over again. And what inspires me, because sometimes you get into that little rut, and it's like, I see stuff like yours, it's like, that's inspiring. And that gets me back on track again to want to create again. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's good. Good way to end it. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Shannon. We'll be in touch, and I'll send you the replay if you wanted to share it with anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to.
Group. Yeah. So appreciate you coming on board. Thanks, John, for everything. And
thank you.
Thank you, guys.
We'll talk to you later.
See you soon.
All right. Take care.